On one final matter, today our nation's capital will welcome a rally of Jewish Americans and friends of Israel. The participants in today's events are gathering in mourning, in worry, in fear, and in shared resolve. In the dark days since the terrorist massacre of October the 7th, their message has been crystal clear. There is no moral equivalence between terrorism and self-defense. Israel has a right to exist, and Jews everywhere have a right to live without fear. These basic truths should be obvious and unimpeachable. But if anyone failed to see the creeping advance of anti-Semitism across the West in recent years, if any corner of our society let itself believe that this unique hatred of Jews has been confined to history, that naive fiction was shattered on October 7th and swept away by the hate that is poured across college campuses and city streets throughout America and the West over the past month. In just the first week after Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad murdered 1,200 Israelis, harassment, vandalism, and assault against American Jews rose 400%. But the peaceful people gathering in Washington today aren't here to ask for pity for themselves. They're here on behalf of the more than 240 hostages, including a 3-year-old American boy and at least 8 other Americans who cannot speak for themselves. They're here with a clear message for our leaders: stand with Israel. Since October 7th, I've spoken repeatedly about the challenges Israel faces as it works to protect its people, bring the hostages home, and destroy Hamas' capability to go to war. I've talked about the terrorists' reprehensible record of systematically violating the customary laws of war, their expropriation of humanitarian aid, their cold-blooded practice of putting command centers and weapons caches in hospitals, schools, and even mosques, their grotesque penchant for using innocent Gazans as human shields, and of course the threat of further violence from the Iran-backed terrorists on the second front. This is why I've urged the Biden administration to give Israel the time, space, and support it needs to bring these savages to justice. How quickly some in the West have become confused about the crystal clear distinction between terrorism and self-defense. Not the same thing. Hamas sought the conflict. Hamas perpetuates it by holding hostages and continuing its terrorism. And those of us who live out of range of terrorist rockets should pause before second-guessing Israel's response. This is the time that demands moral clarity on campuses, in newsrooms, in Congress, and at the sharp end of American military strength. It's also time to restore credible deterrence against Iran, the chief underwriter and architect of violence against Israel and against American forces in the Middle East. In less than 1 month, Iran-backed terrorists have targeted U.S. service members in Iran and Syria 52 times. From the abandonment of Afghanistan to the delisting of the Houthis, to our failure to respond to proxy attacks on our friends in the region, the Biden administration has made Iran's job actually easier. And now, as America dithers over support for the friends in Ukraine, Tehran is throwing itself firmly behind Putin's Russia. It will take more than demolishing a couple of warehouses to show our adversaries we're credible. Iran and its terrorist networks must know that violence against America or our allies will be met swiftly and overwhelmingly with lethal force.